Herb Engert, America's Strategic Growth Markets Leader, Ernst & Young, LLP. Even got the LLP.
There you go.
Let's talk about strategic growth and what makes a great fast growth company, Herb. What traits do you see that define those entrepreneurs?
I think the traits that define the entrepreneurs is that, they're bold, they're not afraid to take risk, they actually really, are just unafraid. I mean, I think that they're out there, they're on a mission, they're growing their businesses, and they're not worrying, they worry, but they're not worrying about the things that some of us would worry about, right? I mean, they're just out there trying to make a great business, grow a great business, and that's what I really think a true testament of an entrepreneur is. Somebody who's just really passionate about what they're doing.
Do you think vision plays a point in it, the ability to see things others do not?
I clearly do. I think the number one characteristic of a leader is actually having vision, and we actually heard that this morning here at the conference from President Bush. I mean, he talked about vision and leadership, and so that's the number one characteristic to me. And so I definitely think they have to have vision. I think they have to, they do see things that perhaps we don't see, but I think they actually look for opportunities, unmet opportunities. And that's what is so interesting about this week as well, is we've talked a lot about opportunities. We started with Michael Dell, and he said, go to China, right? What would he do with $1,000, right? He wouldn't invest, he'd start a business and he'd go to China. So I think that it's identifying untapped opportunities. Brazil, I was just down in Brazil. I think there's a world of untapped opportunities down there. So I think they do. I think they have a little bit of a knack to kind of like look for those unmet needs. And I think that, it's serial entrepreneurs. There's several of them out there, and they're just, again, trying to be creative and, figure out an untapped need and go after it. And so that's really that vision. And, and that, again, that is like the number one trait. I mean, that if you don't got that, you're not going to be a successful CEO or leader.
Herb, one of the things that I've heard from many entrepreneurs over the years, that they view their job, some of them, as the chief pot stirrer within their organization, to shake things up, to make innovation a daily process. How do you view that?
I think that's interesting. I haven't heard that pot stir. I do think innovation is key. I mean, clearly, if you don't innovate, you won't be here. So it's what we used to say, innovate or evaporate, right? And we see that, right? I mean, there's lots of examples out there, and the markets turn. Most of the major indexes turn over every 5 years, and that happens for one or two reasons, right? A company didn't innovate, or they basically sold themselves, right? So I mean, those are the two leading reasons, and so I do think that innovation is pretty key, and it's not like your traditional, like you have to innovate or create the next best technology product or something. There can be innovation in so many different ways, and in the products and services that you actually offer. So, I think innovation is absolutely key to any CEO. I think they are clearly, the key to that. I haven't heard that term though that you use, but I like it. I'm going to use it.
Chief pot stirrer. It's a chapter in our book.
Well, I think that also, sometimes that great entrepreneurs, really, they obviously get so wrapped up sometimes, right? That, and we've actually coined this with our Winning Women, right? You got to work on the business, not in the business. And if you get, I think great CEOs can actually see the fact that they need to bring in and surround themselves with great talent, because they need to take that step back. They need to continue to let those creative juices flow, and so not get so in the business that they, that they don't see some of the things that maybe they saw when they first started the business.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we've heard all week long is really the idea that you have to be smart enough to know what you don't know, and to recognize your own limitations, and to find those folks that fill those gaps for you. As you're talking to entrepreneurs across America, how do you find that ability to be humble enough to recognize that those really become the entrepreneurs that are most successful? Have you found that?
I think that's so interesting. Obviously, President Bush said that this morning, and I wrote that down because I actually think that regardless of entrepreneurship, just leadership in general, right? I think being able to admit that you don't know something and either go find somebody that does or get somebody to help you, I think is key. I do, so I was reflecting on that in my own leadership, and in our own organization. But I do think it is interesting that most of the great leaders, most of the great CEOs out there, clearly I think are are humble enough to basically acknowledge that they don't know something and actually will go seek help, bring in a great team. And I think, again, it comes back to the team, right? Surrounding yourself with great people, because you're only as good as the people below you and the team that you've assembled. So I think most are, actually. I think I'd actually agree with that.
Another trait that that I found, and test the theory with you as well, is that there are other entrepreneurs who they wouldn't do well working for other people. I like to call them the misfits. That those are the folks that would never do well in a corporate environment working for someone else, but yet they flourish when they're able to really get those creative juices flowing.
Yeah.
I think Francis Ford Coppola spoke about that this morning, the idea that the great ideas, people think it's crazy at the time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's, I think there's many CEOs that fit that mold. Like they definitely could never work in corporate America. I think there's probably a lot that fit in that category. I do think, though, there's a lot of CEOs that actually do come out of corporate America. So there's a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs that actually are very successful, and they actually have grown up in larger organizations. And so I think that they come to their entrepreneurial roots ultimately coming out of larger organizations where maybe they were in an entrepreneurial role, right? And I'm sure you've heard that word from us or from others, right? But I do think then, that experience of working in large organizations, and that's the only reason I wouldn't wholeheartedly agree with that statement, because I do think that in our research we have found that a lot of the entrepreneurs are more, senior entrepreneurs that maybe are average age, 30 plus or whatever, right? So they have spent some time in another organization. So I think that training ground, that proving ground has actually been most helpful to them. What I really think is the missing opportunity is that concept of entrepreneurship, because what I really think, if most organizations were smart, they wouldn't let some of those people leave, because they really would foster that spirit of entrepreneurship and promote those ideas and incubate them inside their organizations. And I think as much as corporate America is incubating those ideas, I think we have to do more of that, because there's some large organizations that really can make a world of difference, and they got the resources, right? And they can really commit to this. And if they really empower the spirit of entrepreneurship and empowering entrepreneurs within an organization, just think of what we could create and what they could develop and where they could take themselves. So I think that is something I'd love to see develop further. I do think that we're seeing this whole concept of reverse innovation a little bit too, and that especially in emerging markets where you go and innovate locally, right? So you're localizing some innovation and then bringing it back to, in this case, the United States or something. So I hope also in the spirit of that, we embrace that and we actually continue to support entrepreneurship within bigger organizations, because I think it takes all types of entrepreneurs, the budding entrepreneurs, that actually are fast growth, high growth companies, but the spirit of entrepreneurship within bigger organizations, I think is untapped, to be perfectly honest.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And one of the common themes we've been hearing about, not just today or this week, but over the last decade plus, is the idea of best ways to engage with stakeholders, to make process improvements, to create new products and services. I'd like you to reflect on that two ways. One is what you're seeing with your clients, but second is what is Ernst & Young itself doing to engage with its stakeholders to develop programs such as this, where they hear from the marketplace and find ways to serve that?
So stakeholders, I just want to make sure I understand your
Clients,
question.
vendors, employees.
And what are we doing to actually support them?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great question. And I actually am reflecting on the stakeholder concept, because we were talking the other day in the private equity panel around stakeholders. So, there's clearly you want to create value for your stakeholders. And then, so stakeholders come in those different varieties. So that's why I was wanting to stop and reflect on your question, because there are obviously your shareholders. So that is a key constituency of stakeholders. But there are your customers, your employers, your suppliers, and those are stakeholders. And there was this whole, this healthy debate, and I think with the private equity individuals as well as the portfolio companies, and that to the extent those interests are aligned, right, then it's a perfect match, right, between stakeholders, shareholders, stakeholders, and then stakeholders broadly speaking. So I think that I thought that dynamic was an interesting one, so I wanted to obviously reflect on it. So what are we doing? I mean, obviously our our clients, our suppliers, our constituency, and in this case, our strategic growth markets practice, what we call our ecosystem, right, is extraordinarily important to us. So we do this conference to provide value to our ecosystem, right? We do our Entrepreneur of the Year program to provide value to our ecosystem, right? We're doing lots of things, and that not only provides value to our ecosystem, it provides value to our clients, right? And we hope that everything we're doing is to provide value to our clients, bringing them to a conference like this, sharing the insights and input of doing business in emerging markets, right? How to innovate, deals, cloud, new innovative ideas, and opening their minds. And I've had so many people come up to me and say, I've gotten so much out of this, thank you so much. And I say, that's all I needed, because it's taken a mountain to build this, but that's all I wanted was a thank you. And so that is real value that we do provide. On the shareholder side, if I think about our business, I'm a shareholder, we're partnerships, so I'm a shareholder. So the value to me is, the experiences I think that I get. Obviously, I'm monetarily rewarded, but, I've never been in this business for the money. I've always been in this business, obviously, for what I've learned, what I've, been able to extract, and how I've grown, and how I've helped people and mentor others and people that have mentored me. So, value can come in lots of different ways. And so for me personally, that's the best I got to offer you, because I'm still not in it. I'm loving what I'm doing. I couldn't have ever written a job description that was this perfect, clearly. But I think that's kind of my view on stakeholders, so to speak. But I have a new perspective on it after listening to that panel this week, because I probably, while it was obvious to me, whenever I use that word stakeholders, I typically think of the shareholders, right? And so I thought it was good. Unconsciously, I think I'm always thinking about stakeholders, my clients, and our ecosystem. But I probably always defaulted, and maybe it's just terminology, but I probably always defaulted, and I thought that dialogue and debate was an interesting one. But I do agree that when all align, then it's nirvana.
Yeah, it's a great thing. So, the idea of best practices. This is a ecosystem, to use your term, of sharing great ideas.
Yep.
How, from your perspective in the practice that you're leading at Ernst & Young, are you adopting the best practices from the entrepreneurs here? Because Ernst & Young is an extremely entrepreneurial organization in its own right.
Yeah.
Think about its whole beginnings in Cleveland, Ohio, my hometown.
Exactly.
And going
the
to become
hometown of Ernst &
absolutely,
Young.
yeah, exactly, a global brand. So how do you do that?
So I will give you an example, a real life example. So I'll go, I've spent most of my career in private equity. So, I advise lots of private equity clients, and we actually helped a private equity client create this risk management framework and methodology. And so, we did that, and as we worked through it, which was painstaking over a couple year period of time, because in reality, we didn't know what we were building, frankly. But at one point, my client said, we've been working on this, and it's come to me that, we in our organization, we're great deal people, we're financial engineers, right? But we really need to provide value to our companies, and we're really providing that value because we're trying to help them manage risk. And he used the term that, we have two real things that we're trying to do. We try to help manage risk, and we try to take away excuses, right? And in some of those cases, the latter is addressed by risk management, effective risk management. So so we did that, and we've actually created that, and it actually is something that we kind of adopted, and we've been actually using as a model to actually take to other private equity funds and work with other companies in their portfolio, because it really was a best practice. It was something that, again, you kind of get wrapped up in something and you work on something and it's all kind of right in front of you, and you don't realize that a best practice or a model or framework that is so obvious to you, right? That you put it down on paper and then you start to replay it to others, and they're like, wow, this is, we'll pay you for this. It's like, you're sitting there like, wow, this is, it's interesting. But so I think that was so that was just one example. There's several ideas that actually, that we take every day. In reality, here at the conference, right, we talked about entrepreneurs to the rescue the other morning, and I think we're anxious. We put up a board to hear other ideas from the entrepreneurs to see how they can actually have a real impact in public policy, and how we can actually take our ideas to Washington. And so I think, we're going to actually leverage our network and our convening power and really try to put something together. But we need their help, and we need their best practices and their ideas. And that really came up because our chairman, Jim Turley, and I were standing there, and an entrepreneur came up and said, I've already sketched out an idea for you, and this is what we need to do. So I don't know, I have to say, I think good ideas are happening every day. I mean, there's been 1,000 that have happened at this meeting, and then some. So, we're leveraging best practices every day. I actually, again, selfishly feel like I'd like to, I get so much more, again, out of this conference. I know my clients and targets and prospects and everybody here, our ecosystem is getting lots of great information, but I almost feel selfish that I'm getting so much more sometimes from these entrepreneurs. So.
And I'll ask this question, my 5th year out here.
Yep.
And my first year out here was before it was the Strategic Growth Forum back in '98, when it was just the
three-day
Entrepreneur of the Year.
Yep.
And then the last several years, back to back to back. Every year, it's improved.
Yeah.
This, by far, is the most impressive year that I've been to.
Well, it's because I'm in charge.
Make sure Maria knows that. But
that's why I want to get it on camera.
Here's the question, though. How do you top it for the next year? How do you take the ideas from this year and implement them for next year and beyond?
I already, the mind is already working. In reality, so how do you top it? I'll say this. I think this has been fabulous. And I've been here for all those years too. And it does seem like it's been getting increasingly better. But in reality, it's not. Because I remember how inspired I left when Jack Welch spoke 4 years ago. And then Bob Nardelli spoke. And I'm getting tingling just thinking about, I remember writing down Jack's, I think he said something along the lines of, if you just sit there, you'll get gobbled up if you don't gobble up somebody else, was kind of the gist of it, right? And you got to be aggressive and, just take the bull by the horns. And, he had like some really crisp messages, and obviously that was Jack Welch's style, right? He was just he was a go for it, go for the gusto type of guy. And Bob Nardelli was talking about him the other day, and what a great man and entrepreneur he was. So I think my feelings and emotions and my experience then, I think, will be what it is today. So while the names, we may have more names or what have you, I still feel like every year I've left this conference equally as inspired. And so next year, we already have a few folks confirmed. So we have Fred Smith confirmed from FedEx. And we've already publicized that. We have 2 other CEOs that I cannot announce right now, but they are already confirmed, and we have them nailed down.
Fantastic.
So I think the other thing is we just also try to be timely. Brazil, Russia, India, and China may not have, weren't that relevant 4 years ago. So, I think it's just we're gonna try to seek to be inspired by the moment. So, cloud was big. We brought cloud, right? So there's always going to be deals. There's always going to be, some of these high-level, high-profile CEOs that are going to share experiences. But then, the best thing we can do is just figure out what is really hot. What is the moment what is the moment really requiring, and what do we need to bring to this constituency? And I tell you, you'll come next year, and maybe we won't have President Bush, but I'm telling you, you're going to say, God, it's just even gotten better. I guarantee it, Dustin.
I think you're 100% right. Innovation is great.
Stay tuned. Mark your calendar, because we'll be here, and I hope you will too.
Fantastic, Herb. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Excellent.